Hey everybody, Mark Schultz here. Welcome. It's the top of the hour again, and we're here for our next session of the Digital Aircraft Recovery and Aviation Virtual Summit. Welcome, Larry. Welcome back.
Hey, Mark. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Hey, I have a special guest with me, Tom Chatfield. He's with Camber Aviation Management. Tom, tell everybody what we do here, what you do.
Well, at Camber, we're the experts at transforming our client's vision of a perfect corporate jet cabin into reality. Basically, we know that owning a large corporate jet is rarely going to be an impulsive decision, and we're here to help the client find their way and get that masterpiece on the ground and into the air.
Fantastic. Larry, you know, you've seen BBJs, Boeing business jets, and I've walked on them before. Some of those can be pretty beautiful.
You know, they really can, and it can be kind of works of art. And I think, Tom, you know, what you guys are doing is, you know, it's hard to figure out how you want to lay out an airplane. So it's cool.
Well, to be fair, it's a hugely collaborative effort. You know, when a prospective client looks at either finishing or completing an aircraft or refurbishing their current one, they're looking at a really complicated process. It's much like saying, you know, I have this large, complex house and I want to put something brand new into it. It's been 10 years since I last painted the walls, and maybe it's time to do something new in there. And we basically, we're the facilitators for that. We're the owner's trusted advisors. We guide the complete process. What's really, really important is we're not brokers. We don't try to sell airplanes. We don't try to sell those kinds of services. We're independent advisors, and we don't have an agenda. So we're really objective. We have an incredible amount of knowledge on the team, and we want to make sure that knowledge and the experience that we've gained, not only doing that particular client's aircraft, but the ones we've done in the past, flows into that project, and that the client is then absolutely satisfied with the finished product.
Yep, that's really cool. I want to dig into it a little bit deeper. Let's just jump in and have a little bit of discussion about it. Tom, I wanted to start with a little bit about the industry. You know, we've been talking with different people about the industry and finding out on how events in the industry have affected different people's businesses. And I know everybody's really interested in knowing. You know, I know you're. Where are you located today, Tom?
Just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia.
Vancouver. So you're just north of us. We're down here in the Seattle area, and you're just up there in Canada. They won't let us into Canada anymore. I hope one day we can go back. You know, so yeah. I know that I know we're dangerous, so that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. At least we've got Zoom videos, and we can talk to each other on the phone.
We do, absolutely. Yeah. So anyway. We wanted to take a look at what's happening in the airline industry, and more so, I wanted to have you share with us what you think some of the big business problems or challenges are out there that people have in your area of expertise. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's take a step back and sort of explain what our niche is. It's a little bit different. So we're a very small niche within the private jet industry. We're basically focused on large cabin aircraft. We specialize in basically managing the completions of those aircraft, which means that an aircraft that is built by Boeing or by Airbus is delivered green. That means it's the color of a green primered aircraft with an empty interior. And we basically help that client then through the process of transforming that green aircraft or that empty cabin into a bespoke cabin. The aircraft in that process is completely outfitted with potentially showers, a media room, communication systems, galleys, that type of equipment. We see that the painting of the exterior is done, and that everything is done in such a way that it is very discreet and confidential, obviously. So for us, each client is unique, and so we have to tailor our services exactly to what they require. But in terms of the industry itself, if we take a step back, you know, historically, Boeing and Airbus have basically cornered the large corporate aircraft market. That is, those aircraft that get converted from an airliner into a corporate jet, or a bizliner, as Boeing refers to them. And you know, if you look at it, those aircraft have been delivered at a rate of between, let's say, 4 and 8 of those narrow bodies, that is 737 and A320s, into the market, and anywhere between, let's say, 3 and 5 wide bodies in any given year, if we take a look at it historically in the last 10 years. Now, what has really happened is in the last little while, the flow of those aircraft to the marketplace has been slowed down somewhat. for a number of reasons. The first reason is in the wide-body segment, those really large aircraft, the 747s, for example, the A340s, the 330s, the 787s, those have been delivered as green aircraft and are either gone through the completion process or are going through the completion process. And there's not that many follow-on orders on there right now. I think some of those clients, which are primarily heads of state or ultra-high net worth individuals, they are basically waiting and looking for the next greatest thing, which is the A350, which has just come onto the market and is now being accepted by the German government. And also, of course, the 777X coming from Boeing, which won't be into the marketplace for a little bit more time. So we've got a market that's basically, I won't call it saturated, but getting close to the top. And that means that demand for those is not that high at this point. On the side of the narrow bodies, we've had some problems with the BBJ MAX, and that has affected the number of narrow bodies coming into the market. So for the last approximately 14 months, it's really been only Airbus that's been delivering narrow bodies into the completion centers. We hope that the MAX is going to be flying very shortly, and that those aircraft then will be able to go to the completion centers, get finished and outfitted, so that their owners can actually start operating those aircraft. So to answer your question, so it took a little bit of time, but to give you that background, the market's looking very different, and it's not just a COVID issue. It's basically a combination of saturation, it's a combination of the MAX, and in some cases not the latest, greatest thing coming onto the marketplace yet. But that said, I think what we're starting to see right now is people who have not traveled privately before, who haven't been on private jets, but have the means, whether from a company side or a head of state or possibly even as private individuals, they are now starting to take a look at private aviation and say, this seems to be much safer. You know, if you take a comparison of touch points, going and flying internationally, you're looking at about 700 touch points where you can theoretically touch somebody or theoretically get infected with COVID. And that's roughly, depending on who you speak to, somewhere between 20 and 30 touch points on a private jet. So not only is there a lower health risk, but what's very, very important is that with the airlines not offering as many services as they did previously, now you can actually start doing point-to-point services with a private jet, which couldn't have been done by a commercial aircraft, at least in the last 6 months. So that's creating demand. People are entering into the marketplace, trying chartering, starting to move up into buying portions of aircraft, which is basically a fractional basis. And we expect those people also to bump up that have the requirements or have the means to start buying larger business jets, whether it's Gulfstreams and Globals or Airbuses and Boeings.
Yeah, it was a very comprehensive understanding, and I appreciate you doing that because I really didn't understand that that market was maybe peaking with respect to people taking delivery of aircraft. So that's really interesting. So do you find yourself in a position where there's pluses and minuses then right now? What's the balance of that? What's really been the impact, I guess, in total, to the market right now?
Good question. So yes, from a head of state point of view, that's relatively slow compared to, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago. Narrow body points of view, it's starting to pick up again, especially with people getting excited that the MAX is going to enter service again. I think that's a positive sign. But I think what's also happening right now is you're looking at aircraft that are 15 or 20 years old, Airbus corporate jets, and especially BBJs, so Boeing business jets, that may only have 10,000 hours on their airframe. And those aircraft were designed for 80, 100 plus thousand hours. So they're actually very young aircraft. Calendar-wise, they may be 15 years old, but these airplanes are put to bed every night in a nice hangar. They're air-conditioned quite often. They're lovingly stroked and kept happy by their maintenance guys, right? So these are well taken care of airplanes. But much like your office or your home, it's time to take the couch and throw it out and put something new in. So I think what we're going to be seeing is in the field of larger aircraft, that is Airbus, primarily Airbus and Boeing aircraft, is a desire to refurbish airplanes. They're getting a little bit older. That doesn't mean in any way that they're not modern and not equally up to the task. In fact, many of the owners are still their same owners and they still love those airplanes. So it's really updating, freshening up the interior, putting in new SATCOM systems, putting in new galley systems, and definitely entertainment. People are used to not looking just at a big screen or throwing VHS tapes into a machine or even DVDs. They want to be streaming. They want to see something new. They want to communicate better. And that's what can be done now to those aircraft.
Yeah,
Hey, Tom, I had a kind of question, in this value stream. What's your relationship with the completion centers, and how are they sort of surviving in the new normal that we're all living in?
To be honest, being independent is important. So we work with all of the major completion centers. We're very, very happy to work with them. And there's 5 or 6 major ones in the world. We have a good reputation with each of them, and we've worked on different projects together. So when I speak to people within the completion management fields, there's a little bit of a struggle to get new aircraft in, especially the green aircraft, simply because of quantities. But at the same time, there's increasing interest in refurbishments, and many of those aircraft that have been out there for a while need maintenance, so they're being brought in also. So those completion centers that are doing completions, refurbishments, and maintenance, AMEC, Lufthansa, Jet Aviation, that's 3 really good examples in the United States, definitely Comlux and GDC. They're doing really well that way.
Okay.
They've built up that base load of maintenance, and they're adding on top of it with the refurbishments and the completions.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about the dating, I guess I'll say, of the interiors and things on some of those aircraft. That's really an interesting perspective. Tom, a couple of years back, I had an opportunity to go do some work in the United Arab Emirates, and I saw a couple of the BBJ aircraft for Abu Dhabi Presidential. And I had a chance to go on to one of them. And first of all, that was gorgeous. It was amazing. They made me put on little, paper booties to walk on the airplane so that I didn't get anything on the floor, But the point I wanted to make is that they had another one. They had a 747-400. And that 747-400, they told me that airplane, I think if I remember correctly, I think they told me it had 2,500 hours on it. And I don't have any idea how old that airplane is, but if it's a 747-400, it has to be 20 plus years old. And so it's just amazing that an aircraft can be that old and have such low time on it. And I would imagine that an aircraft like that has quite a significant life left to it, and that it, updating of the interior would be a potential opportunity, like you said. I would imagine, yeah.
Absolutely. And if you're looking at a head of state, such as presidential, for example, or Dubai or Qatar, they take very, very good care of their aircraft. They periodically refresh them or refurbish them, depending on what it is. And, 2,500 hours is not very much time on an airplane at all. But it depends on who's using them and how much wear and tear they get. It's that simple,
Yeah.
But I'll tell you from personal experience, the cleaning crews they have on those airplanes are phenomenal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So
I remember, Mark, we went to one of the Mideast operators, and they were saying, the worst time is when the prince and king bring their birds onto the airplane, because they just leave a mess everywhere. So.
They do. Yeah, I worked with Qatar executive for a number of years, and we did have that problem, and we found a very good drop sheet method which took care of that problem, and you could sort of roll it at the end and toss it off the airplane, and the airplane then didn't need that heavy cleaning. But yeah, it can be messy.
Yeah. Well, so if you have some pluses and minuses out there in the industry, and it sounds like there's, a lot of opportunities that are going on, is that, can you tell us a little bit more about your business and really what you do, and what kind of services you provide to, the kind of people that are doing aircraft completions? I think it'd be interesting to know a little bit more about what your involvement is specifically.
Well, maybe we can start sort of with the ideal owner for us. Now, quite often what will happen is an owner will look around, have flown for the first time with someone else and said, geez, I really like that airplane that my friend Mark has got. And they'll come to us and say, listen, I'd like to get that airplane. And we say, well, how about we first analyze what you need and what you want this aircraft for and what you want to do, because Mark Schultz may be a great friend of yours, but he may have a totally different demand profile than you need. So we go through the whole process. In many cases, we end up saying, you don't really have the demand. We would recommend chartering, but if you want, we'll still help you. So we give that very objective advice. Once we get together and we find that that aircraft is, or that person requires an aircraft, then we start trying to, from a technical perspective, advise what would be the best aircraft for them. We take a look at some basic concepts in terms of the interior. We bring a number of designers on board. We request them to put some proposals together. And then we work together with that client to choose the right designer. And then together with the designer, we finalize the basic design concept for the aircraft. We call it a LOPA, which is basically the layout of the interior. And with that interior, then we have 2D and 3D drawings. Depending on the client and their wishes, we can even do it in virtual reality with a headset so they can walk through that aircraft. And once everything is good in terms of knowing where everything is, the colors, you have to make sure the spouse also enjoys this, because if they don't come in early, you're going to have different colors by the end of the program, but you get both parties in there. And once they have taken a look at everything and are happy and have tweaked everything, then we basically take that information, we write a very, very detailed specification. That specification then it forms the basis of the RFP to the completion centers. And I think that is one of the greatest values that we bring at that point into the program. And that is, if you write a very, very detailed specification, then a completion center can make a very detailed proposal. And what happens is, if your specification is weak, the completion center naturally has to put a buffer on the top of that pricing to cover off misunderstandings. But if you have a very concise and well-written spec, then you get a good quote. You then basically go to those completion centers, you finalize the quotes, you sit down with the client, you make recommendations, and once one is being decided upon, then Canberra really works as the liaison between the designer, the engineers, the suppliers, everyone together, and make sure that it's going to work out exactly how that client wants. We participate in all of the design reviews, we review all of the drawings, we bring a lot of the knowledge in terms of reliability for the aircraft. We make sure that design intent from the designer is translated into something that can be built and certified. And we want to make sure it's reliable and that it works well. Remember, in many cases, when we're doing one aircraft for one individual, it's essentially a prototype, right? So we want to make sure that as much thought as possible has been put into that design process. And then once that's been done, we oversee the process. We make sure everything is being done correctly. We do the quality inspections. We do the ground and flight testing we participate in, and then ultimately the acceptance of the aircraft. And with very few exceptions, there'll be some issues. We'll take care of them as we go along. And if something can't be done immediately, we end up writing basically a note that describes all of that. It becomes part of the contract for the acceptance. And those items then are going to be done in a commitment format as soon as possible.
So Tom, Mark, just a quick question as you kind of went through that process. I guess a couple of questions. So they're all custom. There's not like a standard, here's your standard thing and you can have these options, or is it pretty much they're all custom on the inside?
Yes and no. So if you go to Bombardier or Gulfstream, they have an excellent system where you basically pick out how you would like your interior. They give you a limited number of options. You get to choose your fabrics, your finishes, and a certain number of service bulletins or modifications that they have from a pick list. If you want to do something on top of that, it's going to cost you quite a bit extra because you're doing a one-off. For an airplane such as a 320 or a BPJ, they're basically all bespoke one-off aircraft.
Okay.
So hey, Tom, just that picture that we had up there real quick, is everything done? Is that an actual model that was created, that one there, or?
So yeah, so you may have seen it in the press recently. Canberra Aviation worked together with Kestrel Aviation Management and Pierre-Jean Design Studios, together also with F-List and with Flying Colors Corporation, and we developed a design for the A220. We call it the A220 cabin concept. What you're seeing in front of you is basically the design of the aircraft. It's a 7-zone interior. 3 are fixed, 4 are variable. And it's designed in such a way that the variable zones can be picked by the client. We have a palette of different things that they can choose. And then basically from there, the aircraft would be built using the materials, colors, and fabrics that the client would like. So if we look at this airplane here, there's 3 fixed zones. The forward section, which is your galley, your entrance area, your buffet and wardrobe, is the front. The mid-cabin is a mid-cabin VIP lavatory. And at the aft, there's a private suite and large VIP washroom. And in between, there's 4 zones. The aircraft can be figured either for a private individual, corporate, or head of state. So if we use the example of a head of state, they may want to have an entourage sitting in the very front of it with anywhere between 6 and 15 seats. That can be put in that front section. They can be changed overnight if required. And different sections going aft, a dining conference area, a media room, a private office, perhaps a children's bedroom. Those are things that we can then do. So what we've done is we've taken the best of what Bombardier and Gulfstream use in their concept and transitioned that to a larger aircraft. Lowers the cost, lowers the weight, and dramatically shortens the completion cycle.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And so one of the other questions I had is that an actual 3D rendering of it, or do you actually design things completely like that?
So it's a 3D rendering. Yeah. What we've actually done is we've not only done all the renderings for the aircraft, we have a fly-through video for it. We've done an extensive amount of engineering for it. We've done a lot of the prototyping, and we've worked very closely with LIST and with Flying Colors to develop a new way of producing that aircraft, which is more efficient, has a higher quality output, and is much quicker than traditional methods.
Very interesting. Yeah, it really is. So I think we have a couple of photographs that I'd like to maybe have put up there. It shows some of the interiors that you've done. Maybe we could just get a little commentary from you on what we're looking at.
Okay, so what I can say first is these are all pictures from that A220 cabin concept.
Okay.
What's interesting here is the actual design, the details is done by Camber, Kestrel, and Pierre-Jean Design. This is the forward lounge area. So you have two L-shaped sofas. What's cool here is each of those sofas have two seats for takeoff and landing. The longer base one is actually shows you how wide that sofa is when we turn it into a bed. Lots of storage space underneath that sofa, because there's never enough storage space on an airplane, and especially for sleeping things such as your blankets, your pillows, and everything else. That all goes underneath that. What you'll find in looking through this airplane is we've done quite a bit of work with taking emergency equipment out of your out of the visuals for the passengers. They're all stored. It would be approved and certified by the authorities, but they're stored in such a way that they're not an eyesore. I don't know about you, but I walk into a beautiful kitchen and I don't want to see a refrigerator and a smoke blanket hanging on, or not a refrigerator, a fire extinguisher hanging on the wall. So we've tried to take that sort of out of the visuals.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next one.
Beautiful.
The next one, this is a media room, 75-inch screen, 4K, surround sound by Dolby. You can see the seats. The blue ones are for takeoff and landing when they're in the upright position. Otherwise, they turn into cinema theater type seats to make it really comfortable and enjoyable for the flight. This would be your private office. I can see Larry sitting in this office and commanding the world. Three of his associates sitting across from him, being able to talk. It's an office in the sky concept, so you can communicate with the ground or other aircraft via SATCOM. It does have a printer on board. It does have a fax if you still need to have that. Monitors and streaming entertainment, but also the ability to put on presentations and such.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I need an office like that, Tom.
Absolutely.
Hey, Tom, just while you're there, so are these guys connected? The airplane connected? I mean, to the internet, or yeah.
So actually, on this aircraft, it would be either a KA or a KU band SATCOM system. It would be baseline to the airplane. So that's high-speed data. It's texting and voice. More channels than you would have people on board, so very easy. And equally important, in case of a failure, there's a second SATCOM on board for the crew, which the passenger can also, or at least the principal, can tap into in flight. So you have a fallback position.
Okay, interesting.
So this is the master bedroom after the aircraft. We put it there quite simply because that way you don't lose space for the bedroom by having a corridor running along it. So it's at the back end, it's private, it's quiet. Interesting on this is that it's actually two separate beds that can be brought together. So it depends on who's flying on the aircraft. If the two of you are flying somewhere, I would tend to think that the beds are separated, and it would be then different if you're traveling with your wife or your spouse. This is quite a generous room in terms of its size, very light colors. In the back, there's a makeup table. And if you go through the main door, you'd actually go to the washroom, which is the full width of the cabin. It has a separate lavatory in there. It has a two-person steam shower and a very large vanity and closet. So there's lots of room to have a shower and get dressed and refresh in flight.
Is that it? I guess that's it. So, hey, I want to ask a question. Is those pictures are such high quality. Is that a rendering or is that the actual photograph?
It's actually a rendering, and we're able to make those 3D renderings. Fly-through video is exactly the same quality. It's quite immersive. What's interesting is when we do a video is we basically go through the aircraft from front to back, take you on a journey in daylight, And then when you get to the back end of the aircraft, you turn around and come back, and we're now letting the sun set. So now you can see the effects of lighting, the shades coming down, a different mood, a different feeling going through it. And it gives you a better impression then, of course, of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's very impressive. That really is very impressive. Now, I know that the market for those is very limited because of, you're talking about them being, ultra high net worth individuals or heads of states and things like that. But Larry and I have talked about this earlier today. There's a lot of ancillary supporting services that go around, these kind of, aircraft in completions and maybe design. And, you just said it there. You've talked about, animation, and you've talked about all kinds of different things. Can you tell us a little bit of the supporting services that would surround, the completion of an aircraft like that?
Sure. So basically, there's sort of three principal groups. The first is the completion manager. The second is the designer, and the third is the completion center. And then supporting all of that are a number of suppliers, everything from structural panel suppliers who are actually giving the panels which will be used, to build up the monuments inside, the in-flight entertainment suppliers, the satellite communication suppliers. But equally important, and what makes an airplane unique, is the craftsmen or the artisans that you bring on board for the aircraft. So on board is, figuratively speaking, you're taking people who are building, for example, an incredible lamp or an inlay for a tabletop, or we did something some time ago with inlay mother of pearl on certain tables and that. So you would have those artisans do that work. We would work together with them and the engineering team at the completion center to make sure that we can actually certify it on the airplane, and then that gets delivered to the aircraft and gets certified. So there's really three main ones, plus all of those myriad of suppliers that come in there.
Yeah, it's really actually pretty amazing. Now, it takes a long time to do a complete aircraft, doesn't it?
It does. It depends on who the completion center is and how complex it is. But you can basically calculate that from the aircraft entering to coming out. If it's a narrow body, it'll be anywhere between, let's call it 10 to 16 months. And for a wide body, 18 to 24 months, depending on who's doing it.
So a year to 2 years to do that sort of a modification. Wow.
Yeah, and you need a good 6 months lead time beforehand to do as much engineering as possible to start getting everything ready, because you don't want the airplane to arrive and now we're going to start doing the engineering work. It's expensive to have the airplane stacked.
Yeah.
So I
had no idea it was that long a process.
Yeah. And the A220 cabin concept that we were working on, basically, by the time we've gotten to the third aircraft, because it would be a small series production, we would be down to 8 to 9 months per airplane.
Okay.
So quite a short turnaround.
Yeah, that comparatively, that really is. Absolutely. Yeah. So
again, Tom, you just kind of went through all the people involved in this thing, and so you would organize all that. Is that right? Kind of project manage all that.
Exactly. So we work on behalf of the client. We help shortlist the right people, whether it's a completion center or designers or suppliers, and then we help select them through an RFP process, and then basically manage that process.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Tom, I know that we had a lot of suppliers and things which were, on our broadcast over the next couple of days, like maybe people that provide records. And I know another company that did, aircraft documentation. And so if somebody wanted to be involved in doing that kind of work with completions, how do they get involved in doing that? Like, I know one of the companies we interviewed on the second day, does document management. And I know that when you have a custom built aircraft, properly documenting the aircraft manuals and the, wiring diagrams and things like that is an important part of it. Is that how would somebody that maybe isn't in that market today get involved in that aspect of the market?
Well, I think, to take a step back and take a look at it, the documentation for aircraft, each completion center, that's part of our cabin specification requirement. We want to define very clearly what manuals you're going to be. There's a legal requirement what you have to be receive, what the FAA says or EASA. But obviously, if you're going to maintain that airplane well, you want to have a little bit more than the bare bones. So with that information in hand, the completion manager will then check that all those documents are correct and that they're complete. And then at that point, basically, when the aircraft's being handed over to the owner, that's the point where you'd want to have that document team basically come in, scan everything, have it all digital, have it ready, because at the beginning of the process, it's easy. You can still do it 3 or 4 or 10 years down the road. It just becomes a huge amount of historical documentation that you have to catch up on and make sure that you have everything so there's no holes.
Well, one of the reason I bring that up is one of the challenges that I've seen in the past is that I've seen aircraft like going to modification or completion and come out with some supplementary kind of manuals that then get handed over to, you know, the owner or the maintenance personnel. And then the difficulty in having the original manuals and supplemental manuals becomes quite challenging because they're not really integrated at that point. So I'm just wondering if there's a movement toward, you know, improving that and not just delivering like supplemental kind of documentation. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Well, ideally, you know, it would be great if you just had the green aircraft manuals and you had one supplemental manual series. You can then bring them together because, you know, you're going to be able to go into the cabin section of the STC documents, the supplemental type certificate, and find what you're looking for. If you're looking for the toilet or you're looking for a SATCOM, it'll be in that section. The challenge is when you have a green aircraft with all the great documentation, and then that aircraft changes over time. So we were talking about, you know, some Boeing BBJs being 15, almost 20 years old now. They could theoretically have another 15 or 20 different STCs put into the aircraft. And trying to put those all together is very, very challenging. So if there are document specialists out there that have systems of and methods to do that, and a very good indexing method, yeah, it'd be very attractive for the industry.
Interesting. Yeah. Because there are actually, so that's good. Good to hear. You know, Tom, can you tell us a little bit about your team? Is it a large team, or is it primarily contractors, or how big is the company? You know.
So Canberra is we're a total of 5 people. I'm sorry, 6 people. 4 of us are licensed aircraft engineers, either within the FAA, within EASA, or within Canada. Some of us have 2 different licensed groups. Of those 4 people, everyone has worked in corporate aviation for a minimum of 20 years. And we've basically been working on Challengers, Globals, Gulfstreams, all the way up to A340s, 330s, 320s, 737s. So we have a huge amount of experience there, not just maintaining the aircraft, but overseeing the outfitting and managing the aircraft in my case. So that's the core team. 2 of them live in Europe. Well, 1 lives in Montreal. I live on the West Coast. So with COVID, actually, it's quite nice. We don't have to travel as much. We have people right there. We're very fortunate to have Paul DeRoche as part of the team. He has a company called Test Pilot Inc. He worked with us very closely and helps us define ground and test flight requirements and participates in those. And then we have a marketing specialist who is the wizard and makes us all work hard and work in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the reason I ask is because I know that you basically act as a general contractor and integrator. And so your team isn't just 5 people, it's probably 500 people, you know, so yeah.
We bring the right people on for the right program, right? But the core is 6, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So,
hey, Tom, just a quick question, maybe a business question. So you said that the overall environment has been a bit slow for a lot of different reasons. How has that impacted Canberra? And how have you guys been able to sort of survive?
That's a good question. So in terms of new business, it's starting to flow again. We're having some very good queries coming in right now on new projects and larger refurbishment projects. But we've done really 3 things. The first thing is when COVID struck in Canada, basically we had a lockdown starting at the beginning of March. We sat down and re-examined our business model. We took a look at where we're strong, where do we want to become stronger, and perhaps areas we don't want to specialize as much in. We've decided to focus solely on completion management, refurbishment management, and technical advisory services. We've focused now on Globals and Gulfstreams upwards. We haven't gone down market at all. There's enough people in that section of the market. We have taken a huge amount of time and invested it in developing our own software program. We call it Slipstream. And basically what it does is it takes the information that we have when we're inspecting aircraft. It's all based on an iPad, and we can actually take pictures of what we see. We can mark notes on it. We can do a verbal note taking of it, and we end up being able to have a very good database of what's wrong with that airplane from an inspection point of view, whether we're doing a pre-buy inspection for someone or we're doing a completion or refurbishment management program. And we take that information, we're able to disseminate it to the right people, whether it's to the designer or a project manager or even a supplier, and basically control that flow of data and automate the process of periodic reporting to those people as well as to the client. the streamlined software is pretty phenomenal. In fact, the first time that we brought it out and the first member of the team got to use it, he said, "I'm not giving the iPad back. It's great." I just held it.
Yeah.
So the transformation and efficiency is huge, because traditionally what you're doing is you're walking around, you're taking a picture, you're writing notes, you're writing reports, and it's not very efficient. This is hugely efficient.
Okay.
And the ability just to mark up a drawing or mark up a photograph is phenomenal. So this works really, really well for us. The other thing we did is we really started to take a look at, what do we want to do in business? What are some of the things we want to develop? And we don't want to simply be known as the completion managers. We also want to bring some good ideas in. We're right now collaborating with another company to develop a Bombardier long-range shuttle aircraft. It's basically a 12-passenger aircraft with lie flat seating, more of a podded configuration. That came about from discussions with potential clients who said, I have a number of people in my business that I want to be able to transport safely on long-range trips, and there's really no aircraft out there that can do that. So these airplanes are designed much like a business class that you would find on Star Alliance or any of the major carriers. And we've taken those seats and the layout and optimized it for 12 people traveling long distance safely. We've also done a fair amount of research and are approaching the market primarily in the BBJ area, looking at older aircraft and saying, guys, you can do something nice with that airplane. You don't have to keep the old wallpaper on the walls. What we want to do is help refresh that interior, whether it's completely new or just new fabrics and colors in that, new satellite communications, perhaps a new livery on the outside, and some of the new performance modifications that BBJ has released, such as the winglets, that basically improve efficiency for the aircraft. And to be fair, one of those airplanes, if you go through that whole process, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between a 15-year-old airplane and a MAX that's coming up.
So you've kind of taken this opportunity to look inward at your business to make sure you have the right focus given the current environment, make sure you have taking the opportunity to improve your tools and processes.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
The other thing we did is we looked and said, and it's something we've done sort of on a smaller basis in the past, and that is tailored maintenance programs. Many times when you're operating a business jet, you've got hard maintenance tasks that have to be done at a certain time. And invariably, it will happen that your owner is going to say, I want to fly to Jamaica for the weekend with my friends. And you go, geez, sorry, boss, but you can't do that. We have a C-check planned. That doesn't go over very well. So what we've done is we've developed basically a tool to create tailored maintenance programs where we can then develop a program where the owner selects 2 weeks a year, 2 one-week blocks, says, listen, that's when you can do maintenance. Perhaps that's when I always have a board meeting or I'm off skiing in Aspen. And the maintenance director can plan that downtime exactly in that time period. And the rest of the time, 50 weeks of the year, the owner has access to the aircraft. So it increases availability, increases reliability, takes the stress off the maintenance department. And, most maintenance directors can live longer and happier lives that way. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
It's great that you're expanding those services. Hey, Tom, we are nearing the end of our time. We have a hard stop because we have 2 more broadcasts left today. And I usually ask Larry to ask some wrap-up questions, about success. Larry, do you want to jump in and just ask that?
Yeah, I think we're kind of going down that path a little bit already. But Tom, what words of wisdom from a leadership perspective would you give others that are maybe in your market or maybe just others who are trying to sustain their business through the new normal?
I think it's a couple of things. Persevere, because it's tough for all of us. Absolutely. Take a look at your business strategy right now and try to either parse things down to what you do really, really well, or take a look at where are other areas where perhaps there's not as much competition and there's maybe a pent-up demand for a new market, such as we're doing now with the BBJs and with the Global. I think the other thing is to try to offer people something in the marketplace that hasn't been done before. And that takes some sitting back and thinking. And I think it's not easy, but there's lots of opportunities, I believe, out there.
Great,
Yep.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, those are both really good advice. And you did hit on some of those earlier, and that's a good summarization of it. Thank you. Hey, Tom, listen, we're going to wrap things up. And I really appreciate your business and the things that you're doing. And one of the things that really comes out to me is that you've identified a very specialized niche, market. And I'm sure with the clientele that you're dealing with that you have to provide very tremendous, customer service. in order to be able to satisfy and retain those customers. And so I'm certain that your company is doing well at doing that. Just one question is how do you find the importance of providing that customer service?
I think it's the epitome of what we do. If we can't provide exceptional customer service, we're not going to be successful.
Right. Yeah.
And to be fair, we believe very strongly in what our services are, and it's something that we do all the time. We basically say, listen, if you're a potential client or you have a question about your aircraft or the idea of wanting to have an aircraft that we can help you with, we do 2 hours of consultation free of charge. So basically contacting us, we'll have a discussion. It's absolutely no obligation, but we're able to give you some insights of what we can do, and we'll see if we can help you in any way.
Excellent. Hey, Tom, with that note, I'm going to tell people is that on the platform that we have where we're doing the broadcast, where you're watching right now, there's an agenda down below. And in the agenda, Camber Aviation, Tom Chatfield is listed. And to the right of that, there's a button which people can press that says get more information. And if people press that, they're just asked to put in their name and their email address. And those of you watching, if you want to reach out to Tom and communicate with him, you can put that information in there and that'll be forwarded on to Tom. In addition to that, his LinkedIn and his website are connected to that link as well. So reach out to Tom, and I really appreciate your contribution to our virtual summit, because we've really reached out to people that we believe are having successful businesses, and that we want for people to hear about the successes that are going on, and for all of us to learn and be mentored by others, that are creating success. And I really believe that together, that we're working together to create recovery, in our industry, looking at the places that are positive and the places that need a boost, and together, being able to move forward all together, with greater success. Tom, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Mark, Larry, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, great discussion. Okay.
All right, okay. Thanks. Now, and about 19 minutes from now, we're going to be back up again on the hour with Mike Mullet. And as I had mentioned, he's with Laser Aviation, and he actually is one of those supporting services that provides support of the completions industry. He does engineering and scanning and laser measurement services. So it'll be interesting to see the tie-in between those two. Thanks again, Tom. We'll see you again in the future.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.